Hello there, my child. It looks like you were lost, seeking refuge, guidance perhaps? Oh no, it's something else? Oh, you just ran into combat without raising a shield or taking any defensive actions whatsoever, and you're in desperate need of healing again? Fine, let's do this. Let's talk about clerics. Welcome to Rebel Then King. Today we talk about the Cleric. Oh, the Cleric, the ultimate healbot in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. But can a Cleric do more than patch you up after you blindly charge into combat? Let's find out. Okay, Clerics. They are a wisdom-based class. They're trained in simple weapons plus the weapon of their favored deity. They have no armor proficiency and 8 hit points per level. They have training in a number of skills equal to 2 plus their intelligence modifier. There are really only 2 subclasses, which are called doctrines. You have the Cloistered Cleric. They focus more on spell casting and are granted additional focus spells. And you have the War Priest, which focuses more on combat with additional armor and weapon training. One thing that stands out about cleric builds is how important their deity is. For most classes, when you pick which deity your character might worship, that really just sort of informs character backstory. But for a cleric, it actually affects your mechanics in very important ways. We're going to take a look at a few of those now. First, clerics are granted additional spells each day by their deity with a feat called Divine Font. This is sort of the defining feature of a cleric, and it grants you a number of heal or harm spells equal to 1 plus your charisma modifier. Now, again, that is heal or harm, so you need to make sure you pick a deity that really matches what you intend to do with your character. Second, your deity will determine which focus spells you can cast through your Domain Initiate feat. Now, this feat is granted to Cloistered Clerics at level 1, but any cleric can pick this feat up, and you can even take it multiple times to gain access to multiple focus spells. There are dozens of focus spells available for clerics, but each one is tied to a domain, and each deity is tied to only 4 or maybe 5 total domains, which does limit the number of focus spells you can take. So again, make sure you pick the right deity to worship. The final way that the deity affects your mechanics is by determining which weapon you are best at using. This is due to the Deadly Simplicity feat. Now, this is granted to the War Priest at level 1, but again, any cleric can pick this up. And what it does is it increases the weapon die of your deity's favored weapon, as long as it's a simple weapon. So, for example, you could use the Morningstar, which is a D6 weapon. But if you worship Tyhar, whose favorite weapon is the Morningstar, that D6 goes up to a D8. So again, for the 3rd time now, you gotta pick the right deity. Otherwise, you're gonna just be a sad, sad cleric. So deities will grant us heal or harm spells, focus spells, and weapon bonuses. And this leads to sort of a hybrid caster-martial situation. Now, with that, a lot of people ask, how exactly do I build out my cleric? You think, I need a lot of wisdom. That's my key ability score. But I want a lot of heal spells, so I want more charisma. But I want to hit stuff, so I need more strength. And this leads to an interesting, common piece of advice about clerics. Don't go all in on wisdom. You see, those heal spells will work regardless of what your wisdom score is. And the same is true of spells like Magic Weapon. So yeah, you don't need a bunch of wisdom. Now, maybe if you're playing as a Cloistered Cleric who will lean more into spell casting, yeah, go with a fair amount of wisdom as well as charisma. If you're playing as a War Priest, maybe you dump a little bit of the charisma for wisdom and strength. But either way, you're typically not maxing out your key ability score, which is pretty rare in Pathfinder. And believe me, you are going to want to invest in charisma as a cleric. You see, given how brutal combat typically is, you are going to need a lot of healing in your party. And this can kind of lead to one of the more negative things about a cleric, and that's sometimes cleric players sort of feel like they're in this reactive, all I do is follow people around and heal situation. In one of my campaigns, we were fighting a bunch of undead. A lot of times we couldn't even see them because they were haunts or ghosts. We couldn't touch them, we couldn't hurt them, and they would do a bunch of damage to us. Our cleric player would often save us all by walking into the middle of the room and casting a 3-action heal spell that would heal us and it would harm the undead. And then on the next round, same thing. On the next round, same thing. And that would end the encounter. Now, it was very effective. It worked. But after a few sessions of doing this over and over, our cleric player did kind of say, I wish I could do something else, but it was really the only move we had as a party, and certainly the only move he had, so he just kind of kept doing it. But even if you're not just casting heal all the time, you still might find your options a little bit limited as a cleric. And this is because of the divine spell list, which is a little bit special. It's sort of infamously short on damage cantrips, and a lot of its spells and cantrips tend to focus on alignment damage and battling the undead. That's great if that's the campaign that you're in, but if you're looking to be just sort of a general blaster caster or play in a more, lively, like as in everybody's actually alive environment, the cleric might not be your best choice. So with the limited spells, you might think, aha, War Priest, that's the way to go. But unfortunately, friends, you'll find some limitations there too. It is great at the lower levels, can't argue with that. But as you go along, you will find that you're underperforming just a bit. And this is because of the way the weapon and spell casting proficiency just doesn't keep up with some of the other characters in the system. You see, your weapon proficiency doesn't go to expert until level 7, whereas all of your martials are going to get that at level 5. And your spell casting doesn't increase to expert until level 11, whereas that cloistered cleric gets it at level 7. This is sort of repeated at some of the later levels, like 11 through 15, and it sort of means that you're just going to be a little bit slower to the punch than everybody else, and yeah, that could be a bit frustrating. So there it is, the holy man, the big chief, the cleric. They're sort of the character that everybody wants on their team, but maybe doesn't necessarily want to play. I mean, who doesn't want to run into a scrum, take a bunch of damage, go to confession, get healed, promise you'll never do it again, and then immediately go do it again? But due to some of their limited combat options and, their really limited skill training, which I kind of skipped over, a cleric is often not your first choice to play. And I know I barely mentioned harm spells as part of the evil cleric fonts that you can do, but honestly, has anybody out there actually played as an evil cleric doing harm? I mean, it could be fun. Like, you could be the leader of an army of undead. I could see that, but pretty much everyone in your party would have to be skeletons. And now that I'm talking about it, that sounds awesome, and that's what I want to do. In the end, the cleric is a solid class. You can't overlook all of those extra spell slots. And it can be a lot of fun, so I'm going to have to give it a 6 out of 10 juicy confessions. That is all, my child. Please recite 3 Hail Torax. Wear your pendant under your armor. And please remember... What was that? Yeah, the barbarian. Yeah, of course the barbarian is... No, I'll heal him. I was in the middle of a thing. This isn't all I do. I can contribute more to this party. I am a strong, independent...